Hello and welcome back. This is MC1 Gamer bringing you a rules leak that's appearing to be part of the upcoming General's Handbook. So thanks to Thomas Walsh, who just posted this. I'm sure that a number of you probably already seen this and are probably already chatting about it. I just saw this maybe about 10 minutes ago. So I just want to make some comments and, of course, share it for anybody who hadn't seen it already. So this looks like this is part of the pitched battle games, which are as far as I understand it, this is part of matched play. This is part of the tournament style play. That's one of the three modes of play, narrative and open play being the other two, open play being the standard method of how Age of Sigmar is played currently. And the narrative play is something that a lot of us have adapted and incorporated, but it is something that is going to have a real interesting way of playing that GW is putting out. And then, of course, match play is something that a lot of people who are very into the tournament scene, very into the competitive scene, and very, very intense about the idea of trying to make these games very balanced. Even though I always felt that that's just an illusion or just another way of making imbalance just in somebody else's eyes. But more, whatever that universally accepted format is. But in this case, this is one of those rules that are apparently going to be incorporated into the tournament style competitive type format. I don't really have a problem with these. I think that these actually are pretty decent rules. You may not like them. You don't have to use them certainly in any other format of play. And of course, comps could change stuff. But I actually like these in a number of ways. I'm going to go over them and kind of explain my viewpoints on them and how, what I think they fix and how they think they're reasonably beneficial. So let's go look at the first one. And these are called the rules of one, and they're the three rules of one. So however whatever the story is, they're the rules of one. That's how we're going to describe them. So the first rule of one, the spell can be, each spell can be attempted only once per turn rather than once per wizard turn. For example, after you've cast Arcane Bolt, you cannot cast it again in the same turn. So this is not a bad deal. This prevents some spam of things like Mystic Shield. This prevents over-the-top, summoning, which is look, if you use the version that I interpreted, and I still think it would have been better if it was interpreted this way, where you need to have the unit on the battlefield. And I still think it's a hypocritical, interpretation, because I think it kind of breaks some of the ways that they've built the game, and the way that, and even battalion scrolls. And for that fact, there are some things that I really still don't think that it's that it makes sense. But that's what they did. They made an FAQ and they expressed it. On one hand, if you want to try and summon in a unit of zombies or a unit of ghouls or whatever it is with a spell, remember this is a spell. We're not talking about the crypt. The Flesh Eater courts where they have the non-spell version of summoning, but we're talking about a spell. If you try to summon one of those, and whether you pass or fail, if it's unbound, it's unbound. You can't then go to another wizard and try and cast that spell to summon it again. So you can't wizard spam. There's been a lot of talk about, one of the craziest ways to play the game is to have like 20 wizards, and just, whether even if that's not if that's 100 wounds right there, that's how you're building your force. You could have 20 wizards, just standard necromancers, say for instance, and those guys could just summon, and just break the game with just endless summoning. Even if you can unbind some of them, you're not going to unbind them all. And that's just their army. And then everything else you bring in. And that's just kind of one of those stupid things that you can do. And I agree. In open play, there's nothing that stops it. But it's one of those, it's one of those, talking to your opponent type of thing. If you're going to play with somebody like that, first of all, I doubt you're going to get past your first turn. Second of all, I doubt you're going to get another game. and the word will spread that you're just a douchebag. It's one of those social, don't be a dick rules where you may try it once, you're just not going to get away with it. And, it just doesn't make sense that these are the things that kind of correct themselves. But in a competitive environment, you need some parameters, because that social stuff goes out the window. If you have a tournament, you pay your 10, 15, whatever dollars it is for the, admission, and there's prizes, there's cash and product prizes at the end of the day. It's dog eat dog, it's cutthroat. And if the rules allow for those loopholes, somebody out there is going to exploit it. If the game makes sense, if the rules make sense where you could legitimately just bring in cannons and wizards and just blow things off the table and summon stuff up, that summon your army onto the table, and there's no parameters for restricting it, it can get out of control. So I do recognize it and see it, and I've never argued that point that in a competitive format, Age of Sigmar needed some adjustments, and we're starting to see that. But I kind of like some of this stuff, because the idea of over spamming, Mystic Shield to the point where, again, we all know that, and if you don't, you should understand that mortal wounds bypass regular armor saves. So you don't have to worry about armor saves when you have mortal wounds. So Mystic Shields don't matter. But Mystic Shields against, like, say, for instance, a very shooty army that's not, heavy in mortal wounds. There are some very powerful shooty armies, and some units that, even if it's not the entire army faction that has lots of shooting, they may have a couple of units that are just really tough, that are legitimately worthwhile to put on the table. That can just munch through units with the volume of stuff that they can do. And if you can Mystic Shield up, certain units down to 1 up, and they can't fail, which is a legitimate thing. FAQ also clarified that you can do that. Then the Mystic Shield spamming it can get out of control, and you can have units that are somewhat invulnerable to some units, make them ineffective. Here now you can't do that. Does that mean that you can't take a 3-up unit, throw 1 Mystic Shield on them, and put them in cover and still get that 1-up? You can, but it does limit the capability, and it does have disadvantages. That unit will only have that advantage when it's in the terrain. It would only have that advantage if it's if it's immobile, essentially, and you would have to continue to reapply it, and that could be unbound too. So if you fail it, if you fail to cast it, or somebody unbinds it, guess what? You don't have it. So it's going to be very. It's not going to be common, and it's certainly not going to be pervasive across the battlefield, where you're going to be able to do it with several units because of spamming. So things like that. Also, the same thing applies to Arcane Bolt. Arcane Bolt's a really effective and powerful and underappreciated spell. You do die 3 mortal wounds. What if you had 6 casters and you could start just shooting those things aloft? And you could wipe out units, you can kill characters, you can destroy and wither monsters. It's a very effective way to play. And in the competitive sense, they're now saying, no, if it's a spell effect, it's a one-time effect. It's a Highlander rule. There can be only one. And I don't have a problem with that. I think that it limits some of the effectiveness of summoning, which I like. I like the ability to have summoning be unrestricted in its use to go beyond a wound count or model count, because it's a mechanic. But I do also like the fact that, there are some restrictions that will keep it in check and not make it go over the top, out of control. That's why I like the idea that the interpretation that you needed to have the model of that unit deployed on the battlefield to unlock the spell for the wizards in your army, because then you had limitations. Now that that's out the window, this is something that I can appreciate. You're not going to be putting out, you're not going to be summoning in 3 of the same unit. You're going to have to go and choose which ones you want to start with based off of how many wizards you have, which ones are the most effective ones that you have a better chance to succeed in. If you fail, or if it's unbound, you're done. That unit cannot be summoned, or that spell cannot be affected in that turn. And this applies to a lot of other different spells. There are some very powerful offensive spells, buffing spells, movement spells. If it doesn't work, or if it's unbound, you're not going to get a second chance. It streamlines the game. It makes it a little bit simpler, and it prevents some of the stacking or spamming issues. I think this is a real good one. And honestly, I got to say, and this is probably going to be the case with all 3 of these, I'd use them in all my games. I don't have any problem with the rules of 1. And I'm probably one of the most... or maybe not anymore, probably one of the most biggest proponents of less comp is better in Age of Sigmar. But I've always felt that there was little tweaks and little comps and little gentleman rules, or or standard rules that a lot of people have agreed on or appreciated. And I think that these are an expression of that. For instance, the second rule of 1, which is a roll of 1 to hit, wound, or save always fails. And I like this a lot. And I've been playing with this, and a lot of people I know have been playing with this. There's been only a few times that I haven't played with this, certainly early on. But of late, most people I know play with this, where 1s always fail. And I like it. It means that there's always a chance that your best plan with stacking of either spells or situation is just gonna it's gonna fail. Is it gonna fail constantly? No. If you have lots of shots, if you have several different if you have 40 arrow shots or 100 arrow shots coming at you, you can't, there's going to be a chance that you're going to you're going to get screwed. And if you happen to stack to a 1-up save, for instance, on your save, you're still going to, it means that the Mystic Shield is not going to be effective in that circumstance. You want to get down to a 2-up, but that 2-up could fail if you roll that 1. I mean, if you get rerolls, great. It says you can do your rerolls, the ones that were allowed to be rerolled, but if your reroll is a 1, that's it. It's done. And that's good. This is the game should be, everything should be killy from that 1 wound archer to what, to all the way up to the most godly units. I think that every one of the most powerful units, characters, dragons, monsters, or anything, I think they need to be fearful of being on the battlefield. As tough as they are, and as much as their stats and their profile looks incredible, I like the idea that they have to be in peril. Even the Gash or Arcan, I think that they should be in fear that a horde of chameleon skinks are going to go shoot the crap out of them, or a Battonian archer unit, which is probably one of the best archer units in the game, could do that once per game, 4-time volley, and just pincushion, Arcan or anybody else in the game, and enough ones, and they're going to take a crap load of wounds and be removed from the game. It equalizes things in a lot of ways, as opposed to being nearly invincible in some respects. And yes, I've always said, hey, there's so many things that do mortal wounds. There's so many things that bypass these armor saves. Who cares? It doesn't make a difference if you can stack and get that 1-up. But even so, I like the idea that their standard attacks still can get through the best defenses. So yeah, I'm good with that too. And I imagine, and I would probably incorporate that across all games. For the third rule of 1, this was one that I think a lot of people have complained about too when it comes to specific types of units, that potential for indefinite, nonstop, continuous rolling based off of attacks or even wounds, situations where you can keep rolling and get. I think it's more for attacks, because obviously once you have a finite number of attacks that will hit. If only the wounds then do something, grant you additional wounds, it's not going to get out of control. But if the attacks continue to generate more attacks, that can go. I mean, theoretically, it could go on forever. Statistically, it won't, but it will eventually. But I have seen this situation firsthand and how crazy it is. So I'm going to read it. Any attacks, hit rolls, or wounds gained by the use of an ability cannot themselves generate extra attacks, hit rolls, or wounds. So, for instance, if you have on 6s, you get another attack, or on 6s, you generate additional wounds. If it specifically says that you can do that, you get that. You get it, but though the subsequent numbers cannot then generate additional ones. So that's extremely important, because it's not the initial impetus of this rule that is being capped. It's then the successive one. So you're going to get 1 round of additional attacks or wounds or hits based on that special ability, but those therein then can't then generate additional ones like on 6s. A good example is the Ripperdactyl. They use it exactly the way I saw it. I saw a Ripperdactyl literally Ripperdactyl through a unit of zombies, 40 plus zombies, 3 of them, just 3 Ripperdactyls. And granted, they were zombies. They have no armor save, but I've seen them do unbelievable amounts of damage to other units. And, great. There's so many things that are vicious and killy in the game. I never really complained about it, but it just seemed ludicrous to see a unit like just 3 models that can do like 50 or 60 hits. I mean, that's crazy from 3 models. I can understand from 20 models or 30 models, depending on what kind of, bonuses they have. I've built, ghoul units at 30 or 40 strong that just do ungodly amounts of attacks because of the stacking. Same thing with things like zombies. There are plenty of units that do this, and they should. But to have a mechanic that allows you to generate additional attacks, then that many more attacks. If you just have, because you're rolling that many dice, you're going to get 6s, and then when you're going to roll more dice, and then you're going to get a few more 6s. If you start off with 30 or 40 dice, 6 of them are going to be 6s, and yes, it'll eventually go down to 0, but the total of dice from that is just obscene. It's just, I think I appreciate this rule because it's still very powerful to get that extra attack. But it does put a cap on it. And even though it says it specifically in the Ripperdactyl scroll that you pretty much can do this until you fail, this is basically saying, yeah, you only get it once. And I think it would have been better off if they had done that from the beginning, because that's one of those that actually read that way. You just keep going until you miss all your shots. It's just gonna be obscene. So I like these. So I'm not sure, how everybody thinks and feels about this. There's probably gonna be different points of view. I've been feeling ever since I've heard about what the General's Handbook is going to be, a little lamenting that Age of Sigmar is going to lose that open play game. I mean, yes, it's 3 options to play, but pitched battles, matched play is probably going to dominate what most people are going to play. I mean, historically in Warhammer, we've seen mostly the tournament style play. People just use points as an equalizing factor or as a starting point. A lot of these standard tournament rules where you don't have to argue or discuss things. It's just what it is, unless you have a specific regional comp or local group comp. 2 strangers can come up, and if they know what these rules are, they know what they're getting into. The one thing I can understand a lot of people have had problems and they've been on a little shaky ground as far as Age of Sigmar is that you can walk into a game and you kind of have to have a discussion, which is ironic because it's a social interaction. You're playing a game with somebody, but yet you want to try and limit the social interaction of maybe talking literally within 30 seconds of what kind of a game you're playing. I've done it with one text, or in one, comment, to kind of get an idea of what kind of game we're playing. How big, are we doing anything special? No, yes, boom, let's play. And it's that simple. But I do understand that some people are not as savvy about this stuff when it comes to their social interactions. And, they're always worried, and, they're nervous Nancy's. They're always worried about what if somebody brings their entire collection and I only have a starter box? Well, either you don't play with them or you talk to them. But in a matched play, in a tournament style game, you want to know what the rules are going in. You're preparing what you're going to bring to the game, to the event. You're trying to prepare concepts of how you want to deal with scenarios if you know what they are in advance, or different army types and army selections. I understand that. I've played it. I did that tons of times. I did it before Age of Sigmar came out. I do it in other games too. I do it currently. So there's an allure to that. There's some people who really are diehard into that and they want that kind of a game style. So knowing what some of these things are and having these parameters be universal, basically a tournament comp, makes things a lot easier. And I think these are the kind of things that help simplify the game a little bit. They streamline the game a little bit. They make it a little bit quicker to play. And I think they remove some of the not broken, because I think everything in Age of Sigmar is pretty much broken. If everything's crazy and powerful, nothing's broken. But there are some things that are a little bit more broken than others, and this kind of reins it in a little bit. I will say this: I think there's a lot of hypocrisy out there with people who have criticized Age of Sigmar or said, what they thought were the disadvantages and negatives of the game. And one of them is that they said, "Oh, it's too simple of a game. There's no tactics. There's no strategy." But yet they, the rules are 4 pages. They're for 10-year-olds or whatever. They're for children. They're not adult rules. And then all of a sudden they ask for more rules. And when they get them, of course, there's no tactics, no strategy. But there are things then that are going to be incorporated into games, into the match play. They're going to limit what already exists in the game, that are putting restrictions on the game that are going to prevent certain things that you can do in open play. And I think the game will be better for it for the tournament style. But I do think there's kind of it's a double-edged sword, guys. So, we'll see. Well, I'm glad to see that we're seeing some more of these leaks. I know that, the book is going to come out piecemeal. We're going to see little clips and little versions of it, like these types of things. I certainly will be releasing stuff that I don't already see that's out there. This is obviously, I don't have the book in hand. There's plenty of people that already do and are, letting loose on it, which, thank you to all those people and anybody who's sharing it, like Thomas Walsh and I think Nicholas went out yesterday. And we'll comment on more of it. I'm encouraged very much by what I'm seeing. I have some concerns, but, it's hard to be worried and concerned about things when you just don't know yet. And so far, there are things I can live with. I think some of the biggest concerns I have are, how are the points going to work out? How are the synergies with War Scrolls going to, because some of those things, those accelerators, profoundly make units more valuable. I just don't see how that's going to work. I don't think how it can work. It's unless it's some Excel spreadsheet or algorithmic, whatever the word is, with some mathematical method that's just going to be hard to understand behind the scenes. I want it to be simple. I want it to be simple, and I want it to be effective, and that's probably not going to get enough of both. So just be ready for that stuff. But I also want things that are not going to neuter certain aspects of the armies and the lists and the factions as they're playable, because of people's notions of mechanics like summoning or shooting or whatever being overpowered or too out of control. I hope that we're not going to be getting that. I'm a little concerned about the army compositions one that we saw yesterday, but I'm encouraged about the fact that it's an option. That if you have a theme list, it bypasses it. If you want to play a non-themed list, then you just have to incorporate some of these, depending on how much it is, but some of these basic, battle line core units into your army, which means you still can have creativity and you still can have flexibility. But I'm worried that you can't have the 5 giants, the flight of dragons, the monster mash list. I'm worried about that you can't have that stuff in the game, but I can't worry too much until we see it all. And these kind of leaks are the things that are going to give us that information until we have the full book in hand. So I'll continue to do that. Feel free to tune in. Feel free to comment. And hey, if you guys have questions, comments, certainly put them out there. I'm going to be putting out a video with response to questions that people have on any of my videos. And, if you have leaks, please share them. Certainly if you want to shoot me over a message, or a lot of people go and give me, from Facebook or from other formats, email, text, whatever, and give me a heads up when they see these things. And I get notifications like everyone else. If I can catch them, I'll comment on them. But, it's going to be an interesting time in the next couple of weeks and over the summer with the new methods of play. And I hope it opens up a whole new arena for a whole new spectrum of player types with an Age of Sigmar. And have a great day, everybody.